So some really extraordinary stuff coming out from Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency. And I don't see the mainstream media covering or analyzing it really at all. They're covering the isolated vandalism attempts against Tesla cars, people setting Teslas on fire. They're covering that, but they're not covering really why these leftoids are so angry. And it's worth noting, as I said over on X, that these people would be burning Teslas even if they had won. So the fact that we have the power and that we won, it's a good thing, right? Because we can watch this chaos unfolding from our perch of total legitimacy. Whereas these people who revealed themselves as the thugs and thieves that they actually are. And again, the media is not covering what Musk is actually coming out with. And he said that he found 14 computers, 14 or so computers in the government at agencies and departments, including the Department of Defense. And these 14 computers, he calls them the magic money computers. They can literally issue checks or send wire transfers or ACH payments. They can send these things with no draw of funds. So money just coming out of thin air. The US government has such entitlement that it believes it can now just create the money whenever it wants to, which to any Bitcoiner and to any gold bug is like music to their ears, right? Here you got the world's richest man who has access to all these systems now, thanks to Trump. World's richest man, he's not out for himself because he has more than anybody. And he's telling us he's found computers in the government that are literally writing checks and the money's coming from nowhere. So the dollar is just clown world at this point. I can't think of a better narrative for Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency movement, actually, right? The mining algorithm and the confirmation algorithm that makes Bitcoin work, it's called a proof of work algorithm. And it's called proof of work because to have some of the currency, you need to show that you've done some work, that your computer has run some computational processes, and whoever solves that block wins the Bitcoin subsidy award for that particular block. That's how Bitcoin works. So there are no free lunches in Bitcoin. You're either mining the coins and selling them, or you're mining them and keeping them, or you're trading something of value like your time or expertise or fiat money for crypto. No free lunches. Whereas again, we found the US dollar, apparently there are 14 computers where it invents the money. How is that fair for the rest of us? Well, that's not something that CNN's talking about. I haven't heard them talk about the magic money computers at all. And yet it's all over Elon Musk's feed. He's talking about it. The people working for him are talking about it. Mainstream media, not a mention. That this is why Trump supporters are so pissed off at people like Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer gave this horrible interview the other day on The View where he was wagging and pointing his finger. Always bad to do that in a television interview, right? Because it comes across as you're pointing at the viewer. So scolding us with his little wrinkly finger and telling us that we're greedy for not wanting half of our taxes to go to fucking leftoid scams, including circumcision clinics and made-up climate change councils where the money just goes right back to the same people. This is what Elon Musk was saying also, is the corruption is so bad. It really is people wiring 10 or $20 million to create some bogus nonprofit and then using that money to buy private jets and mansions and stuff. It's really that bad. This is not just, a little bit of gentlemanly slippage in the budget. This is outright theft of the American taxpayer. And I can't imagine a single person actually supporting Schumer. Schumer works for the people stealing for us, for the people stealing from all of us. He doesn't work for us, wagging his finger at us. Who the fuck does this guy think he is? I remember back during COVID, he was mocking people. He did this interview where he was like, why would you not get a vaccine? You get the vaccine card, it's free. You can go back to work once you get your vaccine card. It's free. Why would anybody not want a free vaccine? What an absolute prick. What a prick. If that guy's the American government, it's time for some major reform. So again, These people are literally wiring tens of millions of dollars to themselves. They're claiming it's for things like climate change. When I was in school 25 years ago, Al Gore was doing his inconvenient truth thing, scaring all of us into thinking within a matter of months or years, the East Coast of the United States would be underwater. Well, 25 years out, the coastline in New York and Long Island, it hasn't moved by an inch. And Miami's not flooded out. And the real estate in California, the parts that aren't burned to the ground, it's totally where it was 25 years ago. It has not been consumed by the ocean. New York's financial district, which includes Wall Street, of course, the New York Stock Exchange, it sits below sea level. It hasn't been flooded out. It's exactly the same as it was 25 years ago. So we had to listen to this neurotic scaremongering for 25 fucking years so that these people would have the cover of night to steal money from our treasury and to claim it's to protect the planet, when really it's so they can buy jets and mansions and then buy politicians. The thing that Musk has explained, that again, I'm not seeing the mainstream media cover anywhere, not seeing any coverage of this. He's explained that like the whole process is reversed with people like Soros and Podesta. You or I might assume that when you make a lot of money, you go, hey, I want to have some influence in the political process now. I want to have my say. Since I have so much money, I want to have my say in how the system is run. And then you back some politicians and they run and they win. And then, the influence of their office, since you help them get there, presumably that helps you too. That's the traditional path to power. But what has been unveiled by all these Department of Government efficiency investigations, which again, Musk is not doing a good job of getting this information out there. It's not on mainstream media, which I can understand why, but it's also not going viral anywhere. It's not being presented in an easy format. You need to do like short podcasts or really hard-hitting videos showing people these receipts. Literally show the American people the receipts. Way back in the day, Henry Ford said that if the American people knew how the system was run, there would be a revolution before the next morning. And that was back then. I imagine it's 10 times worse now because all the fraud is computerized. They just send a wire transfer overseas and there's no further scrutiny beyond that point. It's totally outrageous clown world stuff. But yeah, so the average wealthy person, if they get involved in the political process at all, it happens after they make their money. Whereas people like Soros and people like Podesta, the system is how they're making their money. Once you grasp this, you can go around and tell other people, right? This is like, you can spread the gospel. This is how they're making their money. So the reason why the Soros family has to back so many politicians and the reason why they're behind so many nonprofits is their money's not coming from selling cars or making spacecraft like with Elon Musk, nor is it even coming from selling software like Bill Gates. Instead, with these political families like Soros and Podesta, it's coming from them making up nonprofits. Billions of dollars were awarded to John Podesta's climate change groups. No scrutiny as to where the money actually goes. They audit us if more than $900 in Venmo tips are not accounted for. And we had 4 years where the Biden administration treated you like a fucking criminal if you received a 50-cent Bitcoin tip. Meanwhile, these people were creating carve-outs with our money, with taxpayer money, and claiming it's to protect the planet when God knows where the money actually went. But the reason why Soros has to stay involved politically is this is where his money comes from. As Musk explained it on the Rogan podcast, they'll put $10 or $50 million or something into creating a nonprofit and giving it the right political influence and the right funding from USAID in Washington. And then a little bit down the road, the money comes back to them and they start buying jets and mansions with it, some of these political families. The money comes right back and they use that money to buy politicians. And so that initial $10 or $50 million investment becomes $1 billion investment. I mean, this is organized crime. And then the other thing that people have to be aware of, that again, spread the good word, spread the gospel here, because people are not getting it, I don't think. When you find out that this is what's really happening in our country, that a handful of quote unquote elite political families are making up causes, literally inventing causes, and then under the guise of supporting that cause, they're sending money out of the United States through USAID. And the money is just theirs. through a very loose and unaccountable process, they award their own people, their own family members, their own friends, outrageous nonprofit director salaries and stuff that you would never see in the private sector in 100 years. It's just outright fucking theft. And so when somebody uncovers this, are these handful of political families nice about it? Are they gentlemen about it? Do they give you a little golf clap and say, hey, you figured us out, congrats? Or do they smear you through their media outlets? Do they smear you and in some cases even kill you? Is this actually an organized crime ring, essentially bleeding the government dry at the federal level? Well, you see the district court judge who recently tried to turn all the USAID funding back on, his wife gets money from a nonprofit that was funded by USAID. And these judges have the nerve to pretend to be impartial. And they're throwing away young people's lives. Even in 2025, these judges are putting young people, mostly minorities, in prison for quote unquote cannabis crimes when it's legal in the majority of the country. And the Democrats had control for 4 years, didn't legalize it. It's just galling. It's galling. So these people pretend to be impartial arbiters of truth and justice. Meanwhile, they're stuffing our prisons with young people who are smoking pot in the wrong state at the wrong time. And they're trying to keep this outrageous USAID pirate ship going. Again, these judges, their wives and family members are literally employed by the made-up nonprofits that were getting millions of dollars from USAID. And the media narrative that USAID was an aid agency is not true. Agency for International Development, it's an acronym. It wasn't actually going to aid. The notion that it was going to a bunch of, barrels of wheat so that starving people can eat, that's not where the money was going. It was going to these weird climate change carve-outs. And again, how come the financial district is not underwater? How come the beach line in Miami is exactly the same as it was 25 years ago? Guys like Al Gore, absolute fucking scammers, gave the whole planet psychosis, climate change psychosis, and then carved out all this money for themselves. And that's what the left has to show for itself. An organized crime ring of criminals. And it involves judges and judges' wives, and it involves senators. And to me, it's so fucking disgusting. How can they not give us a tax jubilee for a year or two or end income taxes? This is so fucking disgusting. The moment that Henry Ford talked about has come, where now we, the people, know what's going on. We know how our sausage is made. And it's not very appetizing, is it? So we work hard. And we take risks in the market. There's no guarantee that we'll even win. Many of us lose. And then if we do win, we have to fork over half of our money so that it can go to fucking Soros and fucking Podesta and fucking Chuck Schumer's family members. And I say, fuck that and fuck you. So for people out there listening who might work in the administration, you have our support and you need to cut much, much deeper. You shouldn't be reducing these climate change organizations from 10 million to 1 million. You should be reducing them from 10 million to 0 and the longest prison sentence imaginable. Right? If Pam Bondi is such a tough woman, let's see it. Let's see some long prison sentences for some of these folks. Because aside from being a serial killer, there is nothing more damaging to the social fabric than being a financial criminal. People like Bernie Madoff, there's nothing more damaging. Because what happens is, society is a shared project. We all have to kind of believe in it and buy into it. And if we truly no longer believe that we're getting a fair shake at any level, if the judges are just looking out for their wives' climate change paychecks, if they're all just ripping us off at a level that's almost psychotic, then that means we all just take our ball and we go home and we play on our own court. We play in our driveway. We take the ball home. That means there's no more stock market. It means there's no more investment at the national level. It means people take their money out of bank accounts. Why would you trust any of this shit anymore? Again, the magic money computer thing that Musk is talking about. This is a narrative so wild that no Bitcoiner could have dreamt it up. There are literally desktop computers in the government where they just invent the money. The dollars don't draw from a budget or anywhere, just money out of nowhere. But that means it's not very rare. It's not rare at all. Again, this is like a great talking point for Bitcoin. I almost can't believe it. I almost can't believe that you're not seeing flashing headlines every minute on CNN. Like another $100 million scam shut down, another $500 million scam shut down, $28 million no longer going to this, $50 million no longer going to the transgender monkeys and mice. Instead, you're seeing they're angry at Musk. They're angry at the billionaires. Stop the stealing. Stop stealing, billionaires. Yeah, correct. Stop stealing. George Soros, John Podesta, keep your hands out of our country's fucking pocket. These people need to go to prison. They need to go to prison not only for their WikiLeaks emails of 8 years ago or 9 years ago. They need to go to prison for all of this. Again, financial crime at this level is one of the most corrosive things you can have. Everybody's going to lose faith in the system. That'll be that. The FDIC won't be able to cover all the withdrawals from people's bank accounts. People are going to be pissed when they realize what I'm talking about. When this is common knowledge how bad this is. This is theft, and again, when somebody finds out, they would kill that person. That's what we're dealing with. These people are absolute fucking trash, and it was so corrupt, and is still so corrupt, that when somebody finds out and tries to blow the whistle, these families in DC literally kill them. So that was their vision, is steal as much money from the American people as possible, and then use some of that money to make our country weaker. Import infinite number of immigrants, infinity migrants. That's their great vision for all of us. Isn't that wonderful? They made their money way back in the 90s when it was pretty easy to make money in the stock market. You could buy shares of Microsoft or Intel for a couple of raspberries. A couple of raspberries and a smile. So they made their money, and instead of giving back to civilization or fucking off at a minimum, they decide, hey, let's make life miserable for everybody else. Let's import so many migrants that when you go to the DMV, you literally can't be seen the same day, right? They send you home while a line of people who are not even citizens of your own country get driver's licenses before you. Our state services are breaking down because they can't accommodate this. And in Guatemala or in Brazil or Haiti, any of these places, they don't complain about an infinite line of Americans at their state government offices, their local government offices. I wish we could just get our driver's licenses here in Guatemala, but we can't because there are thousands of Americans in line before us. And they wake up at 5 a.m., these Americans, and they're there in line. Nope, that's not a complaint. We built up infrastructure in our own country. And, if you want to do the same thing in your country, build up a decent infrastructure and decent trust in the system and rule of law and some investment standards, then you could have all the same things as us. And then when you come here as tourists, you would be respected. You'd be respected as equals instead of these weird invaders, weird unwanted invaders who don't seem to like us at all and are just here because they can make more money here than in their home country. And they send it home in the form of currency arbitrage. Hey, I got nothing against them. I really don't. It's hard out there. Life is hard for people. And people who want to, do better for their families, I respect that. But that shouldn't mean that life in America turns to hell. I feel bad for the younger people. I'm old enough to remember 15 or 20 years ago, none of this stuff was an issue. You could walk into your DMV and get a driver's license the same day. 100% fact. People today won't believe that. You didn't have to wait for 7 hours behind a line of sweating immigrants. You could just get your basic services. If you had to be seen in the hospital, again, you didn't have to wait for 10 hours because every illegal was trying to be seen before you. Somebody would actually see you and take your temperature and all that. Our country is breaking down. And you could sit outside at a coffee shop 15 years ago. You wouldn't have to worry about somebody slitting your throat in Italy, like today with the migrants from North Africa, who have literally nothing in common culturally with the host country they're in, right? When they come to Italy and France, they have literally nothing in common. Their own culture is literally 1,000 years behind modern Western civilization. And so they ogle women and they catcall. And if you upset them for any trivial reason, they try to slit your throat. The level of violence in Europe right now is outrageous. And it's foreigner on local violence. It's not the locals destroying each other. It's not Europeans slitting each other's throats. Again, 15 or 20 years ago, you could go on a European vacation. You could sit outside and sip your espresso, even if you wanted to take a long time. Maybe you'd strike up a conversation with somebody fun. and you learn something about the world. Now you got to worry about some migrant killing you, or in New York City setting you on fire while you're on the subway reading a newspaper article. You have to worry about somebody from another country fucking setting you on fire. This is the vision that these great globalists who made their money in the 1980s and 1990s when it was simply way easier to make money. Totally obvious bets. Like, oh, software is going to come in. Oh, the computer chips that run every desktop, that's going to come in. It's way easier shit. And instead of giving back to society, they've made life hell on earth. So I think, hey, the globalists won. We have to acknowledge that. Little golf clap. You guys won. You turned life into total shit. Turned out to be bigger criminals than any of us could ever imagine. But now what? Now that the game's over, we want to rebuild our country. We want these financial criminals in prison. And if you took your wealth that you made in the United States, if you took those billions of dollars and your great vision was importing North Africans into beautiful Italy, and your vision was infinite migrant lines and former great states of America, I mean, the state services in these states, I'm not talking about a backward state here. I'm talking about one of the top 3 states in the country. The state services are unusable. It's totally clogged to the hilt with people who don't even call this their home. They're just here to send money back to their home countries. And again, I don't fault them for that. I fault these globalist traitor motherfuckers for making this their vision. This was your beautiful vision. Instead of just buying a super yacht and hanging out in the country club, maybe sponsoring the wing of a children's hospital or something. This was their vision. I think step 1 is we return, basic rule of law to all these places where it's gotten out of control. And then these people should be, they should be exiled. No more U.S. citizenship. If you're one of these families who put real money into migrant services and legal aid for illegal migrants and all this shit, just to make our country a hell on earth, you should lose your citizenship and you should be deported to one of these countries with the promise you will never return.